Before I get started with this segment of the Gig Geezer, I invite you to my next live stream. I'm speaking, and I should add, she's speaking, because my guest will be Cyril the Mage. As you see here in the inset, we bear a very strong resemblance. Cyril the Mage is my daughter. She has a lot of interesting thoughts and ideas that she wants to share with me, and I want to interact with her. Hopefully, you will find this conversation very informative and entertaining. It's going to be this Wednesday, December 4th at 9 p.m. Eastern. Again, I'm speaking and she'll be speaking Wednesday, December 4th at 9 o'clock Eastern. I don't want to spend much time drawing an actual comparison of a W 2 mindset to a business slash 1099 mindset. Based on things that I've researched, a W 2 mindset likes the security that their job affords them. They know that they've got a check coming, in most cases, weekly or bi weekly. They also have a pretty good idea of how much that check will be. They know that they have their employer sponsored benefits like health, dental, and vision. They may work autonomously. Invariably, there is someone they must answer up to. They may be rewarded with a raise, a promotion, or some kind of recognition by the job. Their biggest risk taking is considering another job. The biggest complaints that a W 2 may have are being overworked, underpaid, and underappreciated for what they've done. But hey, it's a job. And one of the main attributes of a W 2 work environment is structure. Uh, you can, I can basically, you can point back to how you can plan or anticipate certain things within that structure in a W 2 environment. What are some of the biggest disruptors of a W 2? A business closing, positions being consolidated, or even you being fired. Now, as a W 2 and as a business person, a 1099, we've all had to deal with technology. Although some of us, and I'm saying although some of us, namely myself, have had to deal with technology much earlier than anticipated. Now, I'll give you a good example of this. At this time, back in 1990, the newspaper I was working at was involved in what was called the Knight Ridder 2543 project. And the newspaper I worked at the time was the Boca Raton News. But I was also transitioning to moving at the beginning of 1991 to the Richmond Times Dispatch. Project 40, the Project 2543 project had finally gotten into full swing, and it was now of curiosity to the media peers, if you will, other newspapers and other media outlets and media aficionados. The reason being is that 2543 was the targeted age range of people, or actually the generation of people, which would be the baby boomers, myself being one of those. It was targeting the what people had already long acknowledged was dramatically changing reader behavior and habits. And the newspaper business was, at least Knight Ridder, had used my newspaper where I worked at as the guinea pig of trying to implement some new ideas and trying to engage its readership. Well, for whatever it's worth in terms of technology, the newspaper business pretty much has become a dinosaur, a victim to technology because of the internet. Back in 1990, there was more than 1,500 daily newspapers in the United States. Some would, depending on one source, it was more than 1,600 daily newspapers in the United States. And by the time I reached the Richmond Times Dispatch, it was considered one of the top 100 daily newspapers according to circulation size, meaning that I was at the top 2% of the business. But based on the latest data that I've researched, the number of daily newspapers have dwindled by 25% to about 1,200 daily newspapers. Again, what has been the main reason? Well, you can say declining advertising, um, rising costs, but At the core of everything has been technology with the advent of the internet. And then when you add social media and other facets of new media from the 21st century, what you have is a very archaic source of information. Now, when you're an independent contractor, self-employed or 1099, much of what I described about a W-2 is the exact opposite. When you're an independent contractor, self-employed or 1099, you're very much invested in what you do. There's not only time investment involved, there's also a capital investment. You've put your money where your mouth is, literally. And there's very much a sense of ownership in what you do, especially when it's your company. Some of the things you may have taken for granted as a W 2 aren't taken as lightly when you are the person who owns the business. You're quick to recognize that one bad decision may put you out of business. Now, for whatever it's worth, I'm going to throw this in as well. I've shared in recent Gig User uploads about the countdown to six figures. As of the end of last month, November 2024, which is November 30th, I finished November at $7,175. For the year, I'm at $96,550, leaving me now about $3,450 away from eclipsing a milestone of having generated more than six figures, 100,000 or better, for the second consecutive year. Generating six figures, producing revenue before expenses, however way you want the business. I'm $3,450 away from hitting 100 grand. Now, there is no way, absolutely no way you could have told me about 25 years ago that I'd be into delivery and transport. You could not have told me that 15 years ago. You could not have told me that 10 years ago. I'm not surprised that I am running my own enterprise. I am merely surprised about the exact line of business that I have earned most of my money. Now, we all have our reasons for venturing into whatever enterprise that we're running. I feel as if mine was by default. I realized that over time that I was not cut out for the W-2 world. And admittedly, I have had too strong of a personality and it often clashes with people who are in the authority positions. So it sounds like, was I the locker room attorney? Maybe true in certain situations. The next question then was I a cancer within the locker room? Now, the answer to that is no, partly because I didn't run with a lot of people. Most would say that I worked hard, I was productive, and produced a lot of good results. And also, I didn't bother people. Now, I can give you some examples of the last three uh, captive agent situations. When you're a captive agent, you work in a hybrid setting. In other words, you will see a salary plus commission um, pay structure. Um, but but through and through, you're basically an employee of that principal agent, and the business that you write belongs to that insurance company. So, um, but what I will say is that in two of the three situations, the strong personality did clash with the principal agent. In the loan situation, where there was no clash, it was one of the best work environments that I was ever a part of. The principal agent pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I can no longer afford you." And part of that was because of some directives by the insurance company in that they had put in some very stringent standards of business in an effort to basically get rid of the bad business that they had on their books so that they can bring in new business that didn't cost them as much money. Now, one thing that I will share in the theme of being in business for yourself, a 1099, having a business mindset. When I interviewed for that agent in which I had one of the best work experiences that I had, as I sat across from his desk in March 2015, he asked me, "Where did you see yourself in 5 years?" I told him that I see myself with my agency on the window like yours. Well, 5 years later, I didn't have my agency name on the window pane, but I did have my agency name outside on a door, well, on a wall plate with and outside of my office door in an office building in which I've paid rent since February 2017. So let's get back to about a business mindset, 1099 mindset. Personally, I can't say that I've always thought entirely like a business owner, but I'd like to think that I've evolved over time. Years ago, one way I realized how the evolution had occurred was that I actually tried to do some freelance work for an online publication. And then I had to take a so called assessment test, a talent assessment test. And it suggested to me that I needed to stick to my day job. Now, I thought that was insulting given my body of work and my resume, but I also took it as a compliment in a sense that I had really worked to be whatever I was at that time. In other words, I worked hard to do the things that would put me in a position of some measure of success as an insurance agent. And so I wasn't thinking as a writer at that time. But again, I found it insulting because that program didn't take into consideration my actual background and my body of work as a writer. But that said, in my opinion, when you're a business owner, you're tasked with always looking ahead. You can't make any progress looking back over your shoulder. And you can't make any progress when you're always looking into the rearview mirror. When you're a business owner, you're tasked with a constant assessment and reassessment of your business operations. Some may say that you can't bask in complacency. It's easier to be mindful of these things when you're a smaller business person because everything's on your mind. And that's usually because it's all on you anyway. Now, what happens when you begin to scaling and expanding your business operations? Then you may set out to entrust another person to make such analyses, but you're still always in on it. Another thing, when you're a business owner and you're 1099, the mindset of a true business owner is that you own up to the mistakes and failures that you make or occur on your watch. When you're a W-2, the bucks don't stop with you. You just do as you're instructed to do. And in certain situations, at least in theory, when things don't go right or they fail, it's on the person who's in the supervisory capacity, the person who's over you. Now, another thing, I admit that I may be at a disadvantage talking about any kind of transition to becoming my own boss because really and truly, I've been at it in some form or fashion since 2003. As I've already mentioned, I've come to realize that I may have never been suited to be a W-2 because the one thing that I wanted most in that realm was my autonomy. And I'll just give you a couple examples of that in the W-2 realm. Mainly as a reporter, I loved being a beat writer because it kept me out of the newsroom. As an insurance agent, when I was a captive agent, at least, again, as a captive agent, I had autonomy so long as I was writing business. I didn't hear from the agency principal or sales manager until they didn't see any production. Now, a person with a business mindset also has discipline. It takes discipline to go out here each day that we do go out here, regardless of whether the money's coming in or not. It takes discipline to remain focused on the goals that we've set. It takes discipline not to bend to our critics. It takes discipline to manage our finances and business expenditures that puts us in a position to remain financially viable, especially in the current economic climate. Now, I'll also say this. You have to embrace the challenges that your business environment presents you, which occurs on an ongoing basis. Already, when I took on ownership and operation of a Sprinter/cargo van just shy of 2 years ago, I'd already articulated publicly that I identified that my reason for getting that van was recognizing a greater earnings capacity. One of the things I highlighted in another video was that size equals money. Now, before I finish up this segment of the Gig Geezer, I do want to promote my next live stream. I'm speaking, and I'll also say she's speaking, because the person who's speaking in that capacity, the lady who's speaking in that capacity, is Sarah the Mage. And if you see here, we bear a very strong resemblance. That's my daughter. And so we will be having a father-daughter discussion on this next live stream, Wednesday, December 4th at 9 o'clock Eastern. Hopefully, I'll see many of you in the chat room. Now, I'll end this segment of the Gig Geezer by noting that while 2023 proved that I'd made the right move, I've also articulated throughout this year how I've seen things change dramatically in 2024. And then again, who knows what 2025 will bring. While I have shared in the countdown to six figures my progress towards reaching that number, which is the six-figure plateau, I've also shared that my numbers were also down from last year. I think a better comparison of how I've managed business will be when I compare 2025 to 2024, but then I'll be mindful of using 2023 as a historical reminder and nothing more. The bottom line, the way I see it, many W-2s react, while a true business person, a 1099, a business owner, is always anticipating, trying to position their business operations ahead of the curve. And even for me, I can only state that as a goal, because many of my moves in retrospect have been 6 months to a year too late. But then again, my results still may have placed me ahead of more than 95% of my contemporaries and peers. I suppose then it's hard to know whether you're in on the leading edge of things until you've been out there for a while. And so, if you like the content that's been provided in this segment of the Gig Geezer or in any other segment of the Gig Geezer, hit that subscribe button, give my content a thumbs up, share my content among others, and I definitely welcome comments in the section below. I'm Inwood Lane. As always, may your grind and may your hustle continue.